Well, hello, I'm Barb Roose, a literary agent with Books and Such, and I feel like the woman who is standing by the edge of the stage, and I get to interview an Academy Award winner, but even better, I am here with Books and Such literary agent client and Christy Award winner, Robin Pearson. Robin, hello, how you doing?
Hello. Now I'm great. Great, excited, great and honored to be here. So thanks for asking.
Well, I am honored that you're here. I sent a note to you a month before the Christy Awards asking if you and I could have a conversation, and you said yes. And a lot's happened, Robin.
A lot has happened. Yes, a lot of meals have been cooked since then.
Well, in addition to the regular life, in our little conversation today, we're going to talk about your Christy Award, and then you and I are going to have a conversation about some of the hopes and dreams that you have, especially as an author of color. And as we're in this new season, particularly in Christian publishing, where there is not just an open door, but more intentionality to bring more authors of color in their voices. And so I am excited to hear your insights, your wisdom, and you have a heart for Christ that is behind it all. So are you ready?
Yes, I hope so.
You hope so. Well, first of all, for the folks that haven't met you yet, just tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm Robin Pearson, and I've been at this for about 20 years, a little over 20 years. I started in publishing in 1995 with Houghton Mifflin, and I was an editor, and then we moved around a lot, and I was a freelance writer and a freelance editor, and I got the story for a long time coming back in like 1998. Just the idea. It was just being around my grandparents and my aunts and my parents, and just started writing down stories and just our faith and superstitions and just things they would say. And I wanted to make sure that I preserved them for my children. So I just had, our first son, and I wanted to make sure those things weren't lost. Just kind of get lost as you go on. I saw my grandparents, getting older, and I just worried that, that those songs and that faith and habits, all of those things would get lost, as time, passed. So I was writing those things down. And then one night I was up with Nicholas, the first of many non-sleepers. And I just thought I would just jot down a story, just came to my head about Granny B. And I just started writing. And I thought I was finished with it about 3 years after that. But God took us on a journey, of changing the story, of learning about Christian fiction, about, learning about a whole new area of publishing I didn't know about. Because when I started out, I was sending like the whole thing out to people, not like a query letter, not, can I send 10 pages or, can I just knock on the door? It was like, let me just send the whole thing. And, but, life changed after that with publishing, and for us, we've since had 6 more children. We've been homeschooling, we've moved around, and other stories have come. So yeah, but God is blessed, and he's kept us through it.
I love how you just casually mentioned that there were 6 more children. Like that's just like, you just kind of, there were 6, they just walked out.
Yeah, I woke up and there they were. There they were around the table.
I love that. And as we talk about writing, and as we talk about the desire to create more diversity in publishing, at the end of the day, there is a point at which we all care about stories, and we all care about preserving things that are important to us. Mm-hmm. For you, when you think about your journey as a traditionally published author, especially one of color, what are some parts of your journey that stand out to you?
Well, there are times that, friends even, not encouraged me, but kind of counseled me to take a different route. I had worked in traditional, publishing for several years, and then moving into freelancing, still freelancing with traditional publishers and school publishing. And so for me, that was just, I really felt like that's what the Lord had led me to do, and to pursue that route. So sometimes I felt like I needed, I wanted to give up. It was really difficult. And then there are times when I decided not to give up as in give up hope, but that I had to put it aside because I needed to focus on homeschooling and raising, children, and just living and just really trusting God for it, and to stop, pushing, and to learn and to do other things and pursue other, plans that I feel like He laid out for me. But I did want to have this. I feel like this story was something that other people, that all of us could, learn from. It's just like when you read, the Bible, you don't hear about race, you hear about culture, you hear about traditions, and we all learn from those stories. We all identify with those stories. We all take them with us and we apply those lessons. And I really, believe that that was something from a long time coming, that people would identify with the family, they would identify with the faith, they would identify with just that, learning about bitterness and things you need to let go of, as well as the things you need to hold on to. And I didn't really feel like it pertained to just one, one race or one person or one age. I really felt like that story transcended, those things. And so I really wanted to see the story on a shelf somewhere and in somebody's heart. And so I just held on to it. My grandmother's, just their perseverance, their love of family, my grandma Vi, her love of God, that was something that people could connect to. And I wanted that to come through. And my love of family, I really hope that everyone could, identify with it and be touched by it. So that was my hope. That was my dream, my prayer.
Well, I read A Long Time Comin months ago, and I appreciated how the way that the character spoke. Those reminded me of my grandparents and my great grandparents, because two of them were still alive when I was a kid. I appreciated reading about the meals that were made. I could envision the household of Granny B, because it reminded me of my grandparents when we would visit them in Tennessee, and some of the homes that I saw there, as well as some of the family dynamics. And some of those family dynamics had some issues that had overreaching tones of race attached to them, even though you didn't specifically talk about them.
Right.
And so, because there aren't an abundance of traditionally published African American authors, when you think about your story, and just being a Black author trying to be published, what were some of the things that you either had to coach yourself through as an author of color, or that you felt they were barriers you really did have to get around?
Yeah. At first, I don't think I thought of it, thought of those barriers. And then I guess as time went on, I started thinking, should I change? It felt a rejection of me, not just a rejection of a story. And I know that we get that all the time. It's not you, it's just not the right time. But when you pour yourself and put yourself onto a page, it's hard not to feel that you're the one being rejected, your history, your story. And so I had to fight that, I don't know, those, not an urge, but those thoughts of, should I change what they sound like? Should I change what they look like, but it's me, and it's us. It's not just me, it's us. And so those stories deserve to be a part of the history, those historical fiction and all that. Like it deserves to be a part of, general fiction as anyone else's story. And so I really wanted to stay true to it. And even as I stopped writing, I'd edited enough of, A Long Time Comin over the years and decided to move on to another story. I toyed with making the characters be, to not talk about race, or to make them seem, just without any type of color or ethnicity or culture. No, I can't do that. Why am I giving in to, that fear of not being accepted? And so along came, Books and Such and Jan and other people who connected with the story and saw themselves in the story. And I entered lots of contests over the years, and there were times when I would get reviewed and someone would say, well, I don't understand what this means, because it was when Granny B goes, well, I bet you better. And, and we would know, well, when somebody says you better, you shouldn't, you can do the opposite, but they wouldn't understand, what that meant. And so I thought, I'm not speaking a different language. It's just a way of speaking, and people, connected with it. Now I see that it just, with anything, it's going to connect with someone and it's not going to connect with someone, but I shouldn't take that as a judgment to myself that it's not enough, or that I should be different than who I am.
And I believe that that speaks to the need why we want to have more diverse voices. I don't know about you, but I've been a big fan of reading Christian fiction for years. And so I've read about life experiences. I've read about different genres and different time periods where the life experience of people in the story were much different than life experience of the Black people who lived in that time.
Right.
But I think that you speak to that idea of the more voices that we have that do share from a historical perspective, that do share from a cultural perspective, then people, their perspectives become more complete about the world that they live in.
Yes, it enriches that perspective. Yes. Yeah. I agree.
So there are lots of conversations now, and I appreciated during the ACFW online conference this year, there was a workshop. So these conversations about increasing diversity in books, both in characters as well as authors. And so what are some of the changes that you would like to see now that there seems to be some real intentionality around this?
I think it's wonderful. Like there were conversations that have been had recently about, creating lists of, people of color, but for writers and authors, and, just making sure that we have these lists that people can refer to of, writers of color. I look forward to a time when we don't need those lists, when I really want to just, when, there's one of those questions of, what writer did you read last week? Go. And you immediately see all types of writers, and not just what writer of color can you think of? That's what I'm looking forward to. I want to see people in positions at agencies, like what you have now, like with making decisions of selecting writers that get published, and at publishing houses where you see more decision makers of color, just so that our stories, they're our stories, not just yours and mine, they're our stories. And so just making sure that everyone is represented, everyone is at the table. And so that when people read, they see a full picture, they see themselves. That's where, that's the way the Lord, saw, how he saw it. So as Christian fiction, I feel like we should be the most diverse. We should be the most representative of who's reading, because we read a lot. People of color, we read a lot. And so we should be able to see ourselves across the board. So, yeah.
Thank you for saying that. That was one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why I said yes when Janet called, and basically I fell out my chair when she asked if I wanted to join the agency team, was because there are some incredible storytellers out there who happen to be writers of color, and that in Christian publishing, we want as many voices at the table, not because it is anything other than the fact that we want to reflect the world that God created us as we talk about faith and unity. Mm-hmm. Now, there are many writers who have written in their storylines people of color in their storylines, or they desire. And I know that there are these careful conversations about how to do this well. And so I know that it requires an entire whole big conversation, but do you have any insights or encouragement to majority authors who want to represent different people and diversity in their novels?
Wow.
No, that's a big question.
It's a
And
big question. um, I, I guess I don't want, and I know this, I don't know if this sounds pie in the sky, but to be thought of as different, to just make sure, like in our world, if you step out and go to the grocery store, you're going to see a lot of people and different, but just a mix of people. And so the people that you meet, your friends, they should be represented in your work, and it's okay to represent them in your work, to be true to it, and not um, and not to stereotype. I mean, I think that's important for us. It's important for non Christian fiction writers. I think in my next story, Till I Want No More, I have part of it is that I have a family who, they have Puerto Rican, a grandfather, and they have, white stepfather, and Black grandmother. It's just, that's how families are. It's not just, we look different, we sound, different, like in one race. You know what I mean? Like we don't. There are, I'm sorry, I know I'm stumbling, but there are differences just within one culture. I probably think a lot differently than my sisters do, or my parents, or my children, I'm learning. So, we can reflect that in our writing. And I think as long as we're being true to the stories, I really want Christian fiction too, to not be afraid to embrace different stories, different sins, so to speak. We weren't born with halos over our heads. And so we don't all look the same. We don't react the same. I think it's important for when we tell a story as a believer that we're communicating maybe how we react to a situation. Maybe that's different than an unbeliever, but we're all going through those same things. We may not all look the same way, but those stories and those issues, they're all the same. So I think we just need to in order for people to identify, they need to be able to see themselves in that story. And you don't want just one group to identify or see, him or herself in the story. You really want to reach as many people as possible. So, when Jesus, when he was walking through, he didn't stop just to talk to this one group. He didn't ignore this group. He used examples, he used things that apply to people and the people he loved. And so as writers who we love our audience, our story should reflect that love for them. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
you did.
Yeah.
And again, this is such a broad conversation, and your input is just one piece of the puzzle as everyone goes on this journey. I'm glad that you brought up Till I Want No More, which is your second novel. When does that release?
February.
Yeah,
and February 2nd. Yeah.
And I had the honor of endorsing Till I Want No More. And so I want to share the endorsement that I wrote because I do appreciate the fact that you created a family that was multiracial in the flavor of their conversations, but the actual storyline itself is a storyline that every family could relate to. So this is what I wrote. Till I Want No More feels like an extended afternoon at a family reunion barbecue, complete with mouth-watering food, spilled family secrets, and voices of faith that never lose hope. This brilliantly written story reminds us that God is bigger than the struggles that all families face. Yet as a woman of color, I love that Robin's courageous characters look and sound like me.
Oh. That's wonderful. Oh,
yes.
Thank you.
So that'll be out in February. Well, as we wrap up, I do want us to go back to last Thursday, November 12th, and you won the Christy Award for your first novel. And tell us about that moment and how that moment felt for you, especially. Again, in this case, it did matter because you are an author of color. And so what has that experience been like?
It's been amazing. I have God is just working with me in my faith, just constantly, constantly. I always, tell people all the time that W is the worst case scenario, right? So I'm always thinking, okay, what would happen if I don't, or I don't know if I should ask for it. It's okay to ask. I want to win, but it's not good to ask for, and I just really wanted to, I was excited to be nominated. I mean, just to be nominated. Oh my goodness. And I was with my mother when the announcement for nominations, came out. Who she's been ill, and so just to have that moment with her and to celebrate with her, and this is what she's been praying about and praying for me for so long. Just to kind of see these things, come to fruition. So it was just exciting for my children, for me to be able to be here together. But the whole time that I'm, going through and celebrating with others, I kept thinking of reasons why I wouldn't, win. And so then I thought, well, I should have something written just in case. But just that moment when, you read that first line, of the book, and to hear those words, because that section of the book used to be at the end, of the book. It was in the third part of A Long Time Coming. And a couple of years before it was published, I did some editing and reworking, decided I would, put it at the front and rework some things. So to hear it, it was just a lesson for me. And that sometimes, we have this view of what our life is going to be, the beginning, the middle, and the end. But then God changes it and he reworks it. And he brings, such beauty from that change. And it seems hard at first. You can't understand why it's being changed or why it doesn't look the way you expected. And then that moment when you realize, okay, that's why. And so for him to read, that line and just to think about all of that, it was just really overwhelming, just thinking about how God, brought this about in his way. And for the story to be told the way he wanted it, there were actually 40,000 more words that I had to cut out of this book a long time ago, but the right words were kept in, and so it just, I don't know, it was just wonderful. And I've just been flying high ever since. The kids are, it was so funny, we homeschool, and Friday, the next day, we're sitting down, I'm trying to, do vocabulary when I really don't want to. I really just want to run around the house and, carry my flowers. And my girls negotiated with me and said, okay, well, if we write, our sentences about you winning the Christy, can we do fewer sentences for every one we get right? And I'm like, sure, way to go. So, we can make it all about mommy, So, but yeah, it was a great moment for them because they've been praying. Like we have prayer journals where we started, and you can look back and see, pray for, I'm praying for mommy to get published. I'm praying for mommy to find an agent. So to see all that they've been praying for years, and just thinking about how they've been praying for so long, and to be able to celebrate that with them, just answered prayer in such, a wonderful way. I don't want to tie, the acceptance of others to success, because God has a different, plan, and we always want to please Him and reflect, with His glory and not our own. But to see his kindness and His generosity, to us, to give us that time together to celebrate this, it's just a blessing, and I just can't. It's hard to describe. So yeah, yeah,
That's so good. And I think that's a great place to end, especially just reflecting and just being able to celebrate and embrace God's blessing. And so, Robin, thank you for sitting down and having this conversation with me. Yeah. And for everyone who is a part of the Books and Such agency, we are just, for me as a client and as an agent, it's just, this is a place that I am proud to be a part of. And for everyone who was a part of this year's Christy competition, whether you're nominated or won, we are all celebrating with you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much.